your project, is it Denner Sherman or Denner and Sherman? How do you prefer for people to pronounce it?
Yeah, that to me, like it's Denner Sherman. I mean, the record owner, Metal Blade Records, once not that long ago, he did say Denner slash Sherman, but on the other hand, there's a guitar player called Slash, so maybe Denner slash Sherman. So I would see that technically it has to be Denner Sherman. It's not like Denner and Sherman. It's Denner Sherman. So we chose to use our names, and then of course have a cool logo designed around it, and then people would know what they are getting. The people that know us, that is, and we were just not into making a band name like Hellfire or something like
Right.
that. So we are really happy and really glad that we made this decision, in this part of our career, if you will. Um, so that really feels good that we now have a band in our own name, sort of. That's kind of funny, yeah.
I noticed that the group is somewhat of a super group. I mean, you have yourself and Michael from Mercyful Fate. You have Snowy from Mercyful Fate and King Diamond. How
Yeah,
did you choose Sean Peck for vocals? He's American.
yeah, my goodness. Yeah, so, when me and Michael started, we say, hey, Michael, let's do a brand new, cool heavy metal band. And then we made that announcement on the internet, going to Braywoods, Blabbermouth, and all around. And then Sean Peck, he saw that posting and hit me up on Facebook. Say, hey, I'm Sean. I'm the vocalist for this band called Cage. And if you ever need a singer, I would be interested. So that was, of course, made us curious, and of course we knew who Sean was, but on a daily basis, I'm not listening to Cage, but so we had to go check some of the records and say, wow, this guy really has all what we need. I mean, he has the high screams, he can do melodic stuff, he can do horror vocals, and the most important thing for choosing Sean was that he had that signature tone to the vocals that are so important. So when you hear, let's say, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, King
Right.
Diamond, or Rob Halford, or Jeff Tate, you can also Osborne, you can instantly hear who is singing, right? And
Right.
we certainly felt that Sean had that same signature tone to his voice, so it was not just a generic heavy metal singer that could do high screams. So that was really, really important for us, that we felt that he had that. So so we didn't spend that much time choosing a vocalist, because Sean already uh, you know uh, pitched that position. So that was easy. And Michael say, hey, Hank, we need to have the best drummer in the world. I mean, the guy who is so talented and so different, and that would be the one and only Snowy Shaw. And we called him up and say, Snowy, what about it? And he say, cool, I'll do it. But just for your information, I also have my own career that I'm pursuing at the moment. But I will certainly be there for you guys at every album recording that I'm required, and be part of it. Playing live, it would be a different matter. If he have the time to go out and play live with us, he will do it. If not, then he's working with his own band. But that was good enough for us to get started. And then also, I had another band just before we reformed. Went back. So me and Michael decided to
Mm.
do a new band. I was working with this bass player, Mark Drabowski. We were doing my solo album called Sherman Tank, and in that process, me and Michael decided. I told Michael, "Hey, Michael, I have already a cool bass player. We need to have this guy into Denner Sherman." And I called Mark and say, Mark, I'm sorry that we have to put German Tank on hold, but me and Michael have decided to go back together. How about becoming the bass player for that band? And instantly he was, of course, onto it.
Right.
And Mark is really, really so musical. He is so talented of a bass player that that you rarely hear these days. So I mean, I would say we have a super band, but we just see ourselves as a cool heavy metal band. I mean, we all have a lot of history, and that is one thing. But the songs and the album, also needs to be cool.
Considering you all have different schedules, different bands, how were you able to record the EP? How was the process for that?
Yeah, I had some, since we're living in the digital age here, Sean is living out in San Diego. Mark Grabowski, the bass player, is living in Colorado, in Denver. And Snowy is living in Gothenburg in Sweden. Me and Michael are in Copenhagen. So that already sounds pretty complicated. But, I had some really good experience doing another band called Demonica, some 6 years ago, but where we basically recorded everything in separate studios and then put it together. So I would normally do like the basic foundation with the guitars. I would send that off to Sean. Sean would then send me vocals back, and then I would be the guy who are putting it all into a music session, in
Right.
something called Pro
The Pro
Tools.
Tools.
And then I send that up to Snowy Shaw. He will then do his take on all the tracks. Then he would send the tracks back to me, and then I will start re-recording, of course, all the guitars. So I'm now playing to Snowy Shaw rather than the other way around. That would, make it a little more tighter and stuff. So,
Right.
and then I send it off to the bass player, who, of course, also needs to be playing after Snowy Shaw, the drummer. So, it is like a little tedious process, especially for me, since I have to almost recorded 2 or 3 times. You have the pre-production version, then I have like the tracking version, and then I have the real version. So, but I mean, it is possible. We are using high-speed internet connections via something called FTP, or we transfer. There's many different ways you can transfer files. So, so it has worked twice for us now, and and then when we are mixing the album, me and Michael would go to Gothenburg to meet Snowy, and we would mix the whole album in the studio where he recorded the drums. So that guy who owns the studio is where Snowy recorded his drum, and then me, Snowy, and Michael would be getting good ideas, hey, I need the guitars louder, and Snowy would say, no, I would like to have the drums louder and stuff. But, we get good ideas together, so we were in a studio this time and helped shaping, the levels and, get good ideas. And so that was almost like in the good old days, hanging out in the studio and being part of it.
How was the reception to the EP?
Yeah, that we were really, really overwhelmingly surprised in generally how it how fans received it, and everything, all the reviews that we got from the EP was really, really high. I mean, anything from 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10, all the way, and there was really not any bad reviews. And the fans, even the Mercyful Fate fans, some King Diamond fans, even really were very polite and really really actually enjoyed it. And we were a little afraid that we were going into this. Everyone wanted to compare it up against King Diamond or Mercyful
Right.
Fate, or Sean doesn't sound like King Diamond, But luckily, no one really got too much into that. There will always be a few, of course, but I mean, so that was a really pleasantly surprise for us that people really saw this as a new band and not us trying to do Mercyful Fate, part 2 here. So every that was like a good motivation for us to dive into the songwriting for the new album coming out on June 24th here, Masters of Evil. So that was a really good start for us, I would say.
What can fans expect on the new album? Is it similar to what was on the EP, or some of the same songs on the album?
No,
Or okay.
this is eight brand new songs. So, of course, since the EP, that was the first time we recorded with Sean. Um, Now I'm doing all the music here on so far on these two albums here, and Sean is doing all the lyrics and vocals. So I got a little better understanding of his vocabulary, of his where he would certainly like to go as far as vocals, notes and stuff. So that helped me better understand, to maybe shape some parts of the music for his benefit, or it could also be vice versa. If he has a cool part, I might create some different chords beneath it and stuff. But so I think that we have grown and bonded more as friends. One very important thing, and also as songwriters. And um, I think the songwriting on this album seems to be a little more epic. It's a little more deeper. It's a little more layers to the songs, and not not one song are similar to another. So
Right.
we have eight different individual songs here that stands out from the rest, and that's kind of a recipe that I like to work with, and that's also a recipe that we used with good success back in the days with Mercyful Fate. I mean, so you have a very broad variety of songs, but it's still the same band, of course, playing in, and that allows us to show a lot of layers in music, and play doom metal, and scary evil stuff, and then fast, more Judas Priest like type of riffing, and so we can basically go pretty crazy.
I've noticed that with the Denner Sherman material, like it kind of has some elements of what you have done with Mercyful Fate, like very melodic but very speedy. But it also has like some newer elements, almost like some death metal parts, some groove metal parts. What are some bands that came after Mercyful Fate that have inspired you as musicians?
Yeah, obviously, all the guitar playing, and me and Michael's guitar sound would sound almost identical to, Merciful Fate. And also the songwriting, since I did most of the songs back then, it is like, there's a lot of reminiscence, of course, and some recognizable, parts in it. But actually, personally, I think I stopped listening, or following bands or listening to new bands, even back in the late 80s. I was collecting CDs and vinyls, and bootlegs and all this, and then suddenly one day to another, I kind of stopped all that. I was more like into certain guitar players and stuff. But so nowadays I might go to Apple Music, or if I get a CD from a guy, who are in a band that want me to hear it and stuff. So I basically stopped listening to and following bands, 20 years ago. Sounds a little weird, but so I'm not too enlightened with, new bands. I know, by name, this new band Ghost. I know
Right.
this one. I know I've heard some of the new Megadeth and all that, of course, but it's not like something that I sit and listen to, for a full album and say, wow, what a cool idea. So I think that might be part of how the album Masters of Evil sounds like it does, because I haven't really moved that much since, we were doing the early Mercury Fake stuff. And, my favorite albums is still the same albums I also thought was the coolest albums in the world back in the 80s. That was like, could be, all Judas Priest stuff from the 70s. All those albums are to me like perfect, cool, and so I think me and Michael are bringing a lot of 70s inspiration into these songs, and also of course 80s type of metal, and I don't think we have too much modern elements in our songwriting. It is like you can always, I can easily hear, oh yeah, this sounds a little like Black Sabbath in 1977, oh yeah, that sounds like Judas Priest 1979. So,
Right.
and this is like Mercyful Fate 1984. I mean, so we are not like we are not too we are not into the 2010s or 12 or anything. I mean, so we are still floating around in the 80s and the 70s. But of course, I would check out cool bands that I need to check out for certain reasons. But on a daily basis, I'm not spending time sweeping a lot of checking out a lot of new bands.
Kind of going off of that, your work has been so influential in metal. Like Metallica did that Mercyful Fate medley, and Ghost has used a lot of Mercyful Fate influence. What has been your reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean that is of course like very it is cool for me as a songwriter, and of course the other guys in the band, that we can be an inspiration for other musicians to maybe start pick up a guitar and play guitars, or maybe be inspired of our song styling, songwriting, and then create a song, or maybe like Metallica, pay a little tribute to the importance of our band by doing this Merciful Fate medley that they did in '98. Ghost and Slayer also are big Merciful Fate fans, and Exodus guys, and there's a lot of people because they are a generation younger, so they were brought up on Merciful Fate. So Slayer, started around the same time as we do, but Carrie King is a huge Merciful Fate fan, and so that is of course like really nice to hear that you can make other cool musicians happy, and that our albums have that importance in their life, because that's exactly like my excitement for early Judas Priest. That makes me happy in my life, and so that I fully understand that thing. But of course we are very humbled, and like really happy to hear it. And like I said, being able to be and inspire, to inspire another human being to, create a riff for themselves or start being a musician. I mean, that's pretty big. So that means a lot to us, of course, to hear stuff like that people really like our stuff and are inspired and influenced by it.
What are some of the musicians and bands that have inspired you to pick up a guitar? I know Judas Priest is a big one, and I know Uli John Roth is also.
Yeah, the absolute reason why I in March 1977 went down to this shopping mall where there was a music shop, and I had saved up a lot of coins, and I went to the bank and got them changed for notes, bills, and yeah, what do you call it, and then I took the train. I know I actually took my moped, it's called, like yeah. Anyway, I went to the music shop, bought my first guitar. That was in March, end of March 1977, and the only reason why I did that was because of Ace Frehley from Kiss. So I was a big Kiss fan before I became a musician myself. So I said, wow, I was totally into Kiss and Ace Frehley. The first live album and Dress to Kill album, and Hotter Than Hell, and the first album, and and then they did was it Destroyer, right? And
Yeah.
wow, what a cool, the title track, and Detroit Love, Detroit City, and all those cool songs. So I was totally Kiss fan. Had all the posters on my wall at home. So and apparently that got me so inspired to say, oh, I want to be like Ace Frehley or something like that, because at any previous moment in my life I haven't really paid too much interest in music, and I hadn't for sure had any interest on picking up an instrument or anything. So I just probably saw, wow, he's really looking cool and make some really cool solos. And when I was 17 years old, I went to a Kiss concert in Copenhagen in May 29th, in 1976, sitting on the third row looking at Kiss. You cannot imagine how cool that was. And they just released maybe the first live album or something like that. That was awesome. And eventually that led me to, went to that music shop and bought this Japanese copy of a Black Les Paul, so it kind of looked a little like Israeli. So that was my first inspiration, and then I started to learn how to play guitar, and obviously I couldn't do anything. Learn to play Smoke on the Water on one string and all that, and then I got into learning some tricks like Ted Nugent riffs. They were pretty cool at that time. AC/DC riff, Hotter Than Hell riff from the Kiss album, and then a few of my good friends that were really good musicians actually teach me the tricks, and say, hey, you don't have to take that big chord there. You just need to do this with your finger, and then just use one string here, and then So suddenly I got, wow, is it that easy? And then I took off, and then I was already creative from that day on, and then basically started composing music. So it really took off fast. So that was fun times for sure.
So you learned mostly playing by ear, right?
Yeah, totally. I don't consider myself to be that musical, as a natural born talent, but I have, some talent for something, like I'm a creative person, so I'm curious, so composing songs and parts, to me, that's really cool process. And I can always hear, if something is not cool, and I can choose a note that say, wow, that's fucking cool, that others might think is like wrong and stuff, because I'm very influenced by the traditional, really old European types of music, or traditional French music from the 60s and stuff, that has a different vocabulary in the music notes that are played, as opposed to traditional blues music and more Americanized music. So I think that intrigues me. The drama, the melancholic, the doomy stuff from some opera, parts in certain classic movements there. But so I'm having a lot of fun with that. So I'm totally self-taught, by ear, and then a few music books that I went to the music library to lend out, borrow some books, and, try to figure out, how the hell, that, and you have to remember, this was before the internet. Today,
Right.
where if you're a kid 13 years old, you buy a Black Les Paul copy, you go to YouTube, and there's a guy in every country showing you any song that was ever made, how to totally put your finger. So nowadays you could learn to play guitar so much faster than what I did back in the days, but maybe that hopefully was a good thing for me, not being too influenced by, some guys that might learn me some wrong tricks.
How is your songwriting process like? Do you just jam on riffs that you make up on the spot? Or sometimes do you actually sit down and try to compose certain
No,
parts?
it's like, now as we speak, I have my guitar here, so I would strum like a, just, and then I would just lay, so I would just jam, and then, instantly I know what, if I hear something that comes out of me that are cool, then I would follow it. I would, totally chase it. I would change the note in the process while I'm playing. And of course I know, after have composing song, or as a songwriter for 35 or plus years, I have a lot of experience, and I can any day, anytime, create a song if I want to. But on the other hand, I'm also very critical on, and very selective on, what I choose to be the final, version. But I'm very, trained in songwriting, and even to this day, I still feel a lot of excitement. But it happens to that, like I just played you pick up the guitar. Normally, I never did it with any amplifier connected, so I always had an electric guitar, just strumming it, and that was how I, created all the songs in the Mercyful Fate on the first album. So, and no amplifiers, just a guitar, electric guitar that is, and that's the way I'm basically doing it also today. So I haven't really changed my way of songwriting hasn't really changed that much. Sometimes I pick up the guitar and the first riff that comes out of me usually can be actually pretty cool, and then I would record it onto my iPhone so I'm not forgetting it, and then I can always develop it maybe later on the day or some other day. So it is very basic how I'm doing it, and sometimes I might decide before I start making a song, say, okay, now I want to do a really fast-paced painkiller type of song or metal. I could also decide to do a song like the Baroness, like on the new Masters of Evil. Say, okay, this time around I'm starting with a riff, and then no part should ever repeat itself. So I will just create it until it's finished, and it will constantly be new parts coming up. So no choruses coming back, no same verses coming back. So that's one of the recipes I really enjoy using. And I did that back in with Satan's Fall, one of good example.
Right.
On the Melissa album, there's a song called Satan's Fall. That was exactly that recipe, that nothing should return, and that song ended up with, I think, 16 different riffs, and was 12 minutes long. So so I was pretty crazy, early on. That was in 1983. So
Back in the 1980s, you were on the PMRC's Filthy 15 list. Did that present problems for the band, or did that make you more famous?
I think that at that time, I think we got more attention being on that list than if we hadn't been on that list. Even to this day, it's been talked about. Even we are talking about it now, and it is a cool little piece of history. I think I have like a scanning of some of the list somewhere in my scrapbook or whatever. But back in the day, I think in we had a few incidents. That was in 1984. We were on tour with Motorhead, and then we went to Norfolk, Virginia, I think it were, and we were not supposed to play, or we were not allowed to play on the Boathouse, I think it was called, due to the owners, because we were satanic or occult. So they didn't want us to play, and of course that was like interesting for the news reporters back then, and so that was also, I mean, of course it was not cool that we couldn't play, but on the other hand, we also got in the news for not being able to play, and then being on that list, today is like pretty cool. I mean, why not? It was pretty silly list. I mean, today it something we laugh off, but to today's standard, I mean, nothing can really shock you anymore. In the 80s, you have to imagine that when we went on stage, we had a cross that we were actually setting on fire. That was something that was you can't do today. I mean, there's too much symbolic stuff in it. Back in the days, we just did it, and we even had naked girls. When we went to the States, I mean, in '84, and having a naked girl on, live in the United States, that was like pretty provocative. And I think she was on the show, maybe 2 or 3 days, or showed before she flew home, I think. But so we were pretty outrageous in a way, especially in the early '80s, but. Nowadays, no one would even, lift an eyebrow and say, "Oh yeah, cool. I mean, you have a painted face. How cool for you!" And and naked girls, or or slaughtered pigs, or pig blood on the stage. I mean, that's nothing. I mean, you've seen it all today, and Slipknot going crazy, and Ghost going crazy. So it was a little more scary back then. People were, really like afraid of, King Diamond and, all this occult satanic stuff. What was that all about? And, so, so that I think has been a part of helping the band in, getting a little more talked about than maybe other bands at that time. So everything, really worked out well for us in the early days, for sure.
I'm just curious about the whole occult satanic thing. Like, do you think that people have changed their attitudes about that?
Back in the days, it was certainly King Diamond who was representing that side of the band, with the painted face, with the lyrics, and like the burning crosses and all that. And that time, it was really like, whoa, how cool, how awesome. Today, I mean, the satanic or the occult content, I mean, it's not that scary today. It has been done in thousands of movies, and tons of bands, as we talked on previous, is like doing crazy stuff. But I mean, like the philosophy and the beliefs in the occult, which can be many things. It can be, you know, anything that cannot be explained. But the occult thing, satanic thing is, is a little different. And I just see it as, and the same as King. He say, that's basically just, live by your heart, live by how you feel. That's the philosophy of, at least for the Satanic Bible. If you're into that type of thing versus the Bible, which has a lot of restrictions,
Right.
the 10 Commandments, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, blah blah blah. But I mean, so as long as people behave nicely to other people, and that's whatever belief they have doesn't matter. I mean,
That's
as long
true.
as people are nice people and treat other people equally cool, that's fine. So, but with Denner Shermann, I mean, we don't have anything, we are in satanic or cult band, not whatsoever. I mean, that's, normally it would be the singer that, via the lyrics kind of
Right.
put that into the band. And, obviously with us choosing, having this album cover that we were offered, that of course leads your mind back to the early days of Mercyful Fate. And, since me and Michael were an essential part of that, I think it's really cool that we can come out with a cover that should remind fans of a lot of cool stuff back then.
Yeah, I noticed you got the same artist, I believe, who did Don't Break the Oath.
Yeah, exactly. And also Melissa. So, he did this painting and presented to us and say, wow, my goodness, that's fucking look awesome. And, obviously we knew, okay, this looks pretty much Mercyful Fate like, but, that was not that strange since it was the same artist. And also we chose to keep working with him since the EP, the mini album we did, also were a painting by Thomas. And we really like his very simple style. And I think he probably had a lot of fun. Say, okay, now I might, paint a painting, on whether it's a skull of Melissa, I don't know, the hand of at the Don't Break Road, I don't know, but it, reminds certainly of it. And, he took it into another fantasy painting. And, maybe three light years later, who knows? I mean, I think it's pretty fascinating. And, if there's anyone who should be able to release a cover like that, then it would certainly be me and Michael.
Right. I know that you played with Volbeat back in 2012. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was a really cool, fun experience for me. I was doing nothing at the time, and then suddenly I got a call from Michael, the leader of the Volbeat band, say, "Hey Hank, what about this being the live guitar player? We have a tour coming up in the States with Gigan Tour with Megadeth, Lacuna Coil, and Hell Yeah, and some other guys." And say, whoa, what's that all about? And I was, very surprised, because I really, at first, I couldn't see myself in Volbeat, whoa, and say, okay, Michael, give me a week and I will call you back. And then I went home and say, whoa, what to do here? And after having been thinking it through and listening to the songs and checking it out on iTunes or wherever. Say, wow, you gotta do it. I told myself, you gotta do it. This is an opportunity to, get back out there, get in shape with the guitar and, show yourself and, and do some adventure here. And then I called Michael, say, hey, Michael, I'm into it. Let's do it. And then I, immediately started rehearsing and memorizing, I think, 19 songs, and then we went up to 23 songs. So, I had a lot of rehearsing to do, but, it was not that far from my style in the way that when I started playing guitar, as mentioned before, I started to play punk, punk rock. Even, I tried learning the Kiss parts, but when I actually got into a band, it was like punk rock, like hardcore punk rock or UK punk rock, like the Sex Pistols and Ramones and stuff like that. So all that punk stuff that Volbeat also have, I mean, piece of cake for me to play. All the rock and roll stuff, Elvis Presley stuff, that's also what I'm brought up with. Everyone have heard that, and when you start playing guitar, you start with rock and roll. So that was also easy part, and all the heavy metal parts they have, anything from Slayer type to traditional metal, that's what I've been doing for 30 years. So it was not that hard to, go get into the material. So that was really fun, and I think I would like to think that I contributed to, to the sound of Volbeat at the, for those 75 shows I did, making it a little more heavier, adding a little more signature guitar sound to, one of the guitars, and, playing more guitar solos than the previous guitar player did. So, and also I had a lot of fun, and there was a lot of Mercyful Fate fans coming up saying, wow, cool meeting you. So there was a lot of fans, coming there only to meet me. So that was, of course, like nice. Because, being involved with as a hired gun, that was the first time in my life I was in a band where I'm, only was a hired musician. So I had to, spend a week, figuring out how to deal with all this. Okay, I'm not part of the band, but on the other hand, when we're on stage, I'm that new guitar player there. So, I had to get used to how to, feel good about it and really, try to help the guys out the best I could. The Gigan tour was really funny because, we had the Megadeth guys there. We had Lacuna Coil and some other, I don't know if Hell Yeah at that time were
I
there.
think it was.
I think they were.
I think it
But,
was Motorhead that was on that tour.
Yeah, Motorhead. Yeah, it was Motorhead. Sure. That was, I really enjoyed that tour because, I knew the Megadeth guys from, way back, and, the Lacuna Coil guys, they're European, Italian guys, and, fun guys, and, to talk with, and, so that was a really cool, memorable tour for me, for sure.
Do you think that your involvement with Volbeat might have led to them getting King Diamond for that song Room 24?
Nah, I think Michael is really like a hardcore devoted fan of Mercyful Fate. He's also a hardcore devoted fan for King Diamond Band, and he, loves to show me, and, whoever wants to see that, when he was 17 or 16, he actually went down to a tattoo shop and had Don't Break the Oath cover from our cover from 1984 tattoos on his inner thigh.
Wow.
And so that's how devoted of a fan he is. So for him, having Michael Denner playing on one of the albums, and then the next step was having me on a full tour for Mercyful Fate, that was two, and then having King Diamond doing like parts of Room 24, to him that's kind of probably a fulfillment, honoring his big inspirations maybe, and also bonding with fellow Danish other musicians. So, and King Diamond also went to Dallas when we did the Gigan tour, because he was supposed to play, we did play a Mercyful Fate song, Come to the Sabbath, then King Diamond was coming to the show in order to sing it, but apparently Dave Mustaine didn't want King to be on stage and do whatever satanic lyrics or whatever that was all about.
Oh, wow.
So King came to the concert and he was he was told that, yeah, King, you're not allowed from Mustaine for some reason. And then we went on stage, and of course when King was down in among the spectators, right, and the audience, we did the intro to Come to the Sabbath, where Michael he was singing the intro vocals there. So that was pretty funny. So but what that was all about, I really don't have a clue. I don't know if it's suddenly Mustaine gotten into God, or for whatever reason, but that was pretty bizarre. Because back in the days they were good friends, and Megadeth were touring with Diamond back in '80s, and so there's a lot of changes in that band. But they're good guys, and I like them, and they have made some really cool records over time.
How close are you with King Diamond? How often do you keep in contact with him?
The latest talk I have was maybe 2 weeks ago. We had we usually Skype, and we can be talking about anything business. There's still some business with Mercyful Fate going on. We have some merchandise shop going on, and other issues, right? And just how are you doing? Everything is cool, and I heard this and that, blah blah blah. So yeah, we talk now and then. It's not that often these days because me and Michael have been so busy with the Denner Shermann thing, and King has really been busy touring with Slayer on the
Right.
Mayhem tour. He's also doing his own tour, and now he's actually I think today in Copenhagen, on his way to Sweden Rock Festival in Sweden, obviously, and will be coming back to Copenhagen in a few days. And I think we are supposed to meet him up, and also he will be headlining the Copenhagen Festival in Copenhagen with Black Sabbath, King Diamond, Megadeth, and other bands, Alice Cooper, on the day that Masters of Evil is released on June 24th. So there's a lot of funny coincidence happening on that specific day there. So we have our worldwide release. King is playing in Copenhagen. That's his native city, where he was born, and so that's hopefully should be a fun day for everyone.
I read a previous interview where it was said that you guys, as Mercyful Fate, still had an album under contract with Metal Blade. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, that contract was, that was signed back, I think, in 1992, and then we rewrote the contract and signed another one. So yeah, so technically, we still have an album on contract, and so does another European label. But that has for 16 years or 17 years we haven't really been recording anything other than two songs for the Metallica Guitar Hero albums, the game, the music game there, and but I mean, maybe one day in the future, now that me and Michael are out there with the new band Denner Shermann's, King is out there really vital and really stronger than ever. I mean, that is at least the first steps in order for maybe in the future to see us back together in Mercyful Fate, at least for the sake of all the loyal fans that has been following us, maybe for 30 years or more. That would be a nice thing. Maybe we could do a few shows, or even do that one album we still have on contract and stuff. So we'll see. I mean, nothing is has been talked about specifics, but I mean, it would be a fascinating thought, and let's all hope that one day it would happen, at least for the fans, because we owe everything to the fans, that we are still here to this day.
What are some of your future plans for Denner Shermann? Do you plan to tour soon?
Yeah, I mean that's is of course, the next natural thing, as a band, as a musician, you release an album, and in order to, help that release, then you want to go tour. First of all, because it's fun to play live, and also to, like I said, help the band getting bigger and help the album, make attention for the album. So we have our booking agent in the United States, and we have a booking agent in London at this point, checking out the market, sweeping the market for us. So we are looking at September for European tour. United States might be looking into mid-October, 2 weeks on the East Coast, Chicago, and then later on we will do the West Coast, or maybe we'll do it all together. I don't know. So, and the end of the year we might go to South America, but that that all depends on the financial situation, because it's pretty expensive with flights and hotels and go that far. But if it makes sense, we will definitely do it. So that's what's in it for us. The next 6 months at least, trying to get as many concerts under our belt as possible. And as a band, we have only played one show together. I mean, so we really need to go out there and this is the second album release, and we only played one show. In 1 month, as of today, we will be on stage in Denmark on a metal festival. We will do a full show, 75 minutes, playing 3 or 4 Mercyful Fate songs, 5 songs from the new album, and all the songs from the EP. So that should be fun. At the end of July, we have a festival in northern Germany, Hamburg, Headbangers Open Air. We'll likely playing the same set, so we are, at least getting there, looking to our third show. So the more the better. And everyone is pretty experienced. Everyone has a big record of having a lot of live shows in their lives. So it's we get into it pretty quick, and get pretty tight very quick. So there's no problem.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to say to any fans who might be listening to this?
Yeah, I can only thank all the fans that have been following, especially Mercyful Fate, and maybe me and Michael as guitar player, maybe as a musician, or just a fan. I mean, we cannot thank all those loyal fans enough that that they're still there, and still have an interest and curiosity to check out what we are doing even today. And hopefully we can pay back with this release, Masters of Evil, which is like with the fans in mind, also because we have on purpose narrowed in to be in the style of what made us start our musical career back in the 80s. So hopefully it will be well received. And we also have a really nice surprise for everyone out there. On June 20th we will have our worldwide video. I cannot reveal what song it will be on, but it will be epic dimension, I can tell you. Surprise for everyone. Nothing will be revealed, but Wednesday next week we will have a 20-second trailer, so you should get a little taste of what's coming up. So that should be some 2 good weeks for Denner Shermann. Really cool evil video coming on, and then the full album release on June 24th. So hopefully you all like it out there.